Welcome to the very first episode of Sustainable Living for the Family, Health, and Home with Dr. Monique Adu. Thank you so much for joining me. In this episode, I'm talking all about how I went from being a full-time pediatrician to now being a homeschool mom and keeper of my home. I go into the challenges that I faced and some of the difficulties in making this life-changing decision, and now some of the joys that have come because of it. Hey, this is Dr. Monique Adu, a pediatrician turned homeschool mom and keeper of my home. Welcome to my podcast, Sustainable Living for the Family, Health, and Home. In this podcast, we are going to be talking about all things sustainability and always striving to live our best in terms of the life-giving practices that we can do to build longevity and to fulfill our purpose in life. We are going to be talking about things concerning our family, home, gardening, homeschooling, health, nutrition, and so much more. I'm so glad you're here. I wanted to go ahead and answer a question that may oftentimes come up. How does a pediatrician turn to being a homeschool mom? So let me take you on a little story. It pretty much started back in 2019 when the world changed for so many of us. It was the time of the pandemic. None of us were very familiar with this virus that was touching the earth all around. Nobody really knew the extent to which it would affect us. Life was literally turned upside down for many of us. And that was particularly so in the medical field. As a pediatrician, I would see patients in the office, but just prior to that, I had started to change a little bit into doing some of my practice from home. During the time of the pandemic, I still had little children in school. They were in a public school. At that time, it had not even crossed my mind that we could ever venture into doing homeschooling. But the pandemic changed that. The schools were closing down. There was isolation precautions. People were not allowed to be out in certain places. There were limitations on what we could do. Of course, everyone had to wear a mask. Everything was different. It had even touched the very core of schools, the public schools. So at that time, we actually did a transition from being in the in-person setting of school to being at home, but we still had the lead of teachers to help us along the way, which was great because it was such a drastic change and one that many of us had never actually gone through, because most of our children had gone to school outside of our homes for so many years before. Well, 2019 moved on and the school year had ended, and I started getting familiarized with actually being more available to be one-on-one with my children. even though we still had the hand of the public schools behind us. I all of a sudden realized how much of a gift and blessing it was for me to be able to help each of my children one-on-one and personally at home. And this was still in combination with my physician responsibilities. As time moved on, however, in the pandemic, things continued to change, and I no longer worked in the outpatient setting. I had actually started working 100% from home. So this allowed me to really delve into seeing what a day is like, a full school day for each one of my little children at that time. And I realized it was the best. It was the best thing that I could do for them. There were no issues with being in the school, especially when we had a great one. But there was no mistaking that there was such a great ability to be able to tailor the curriculum, tailor the way we would move in our school day, tailor the time that we would spend together. There was just no mistaking that this was the best. So that's how things kind of turned to being the way that they are now. I eventually transitioned out of working full-time as a physician, and through much prayer and a lot of thinking and working through things with my family, we decided it would be the best for me to continue and homeschool our children. And there has been no turning back. Homeschooling allows you to really focus in depth upon studies, topics, things that you could not have the ability to do when one-on-one in the school building, because the school is not set up for that type of in-depth education that you could give your children personally when they're in your home. The relationships that you're building, the closeness that you build, getting to know each of your children in ways that you would never even imagine. This is what you can do. This is what homeschooling affords you. You can spend time as long as you want on a specific subject, or as little as you need based on your students' abilities, based on their specific learning styles. The possibilities are just vast and endless in terms of what you can do. And oftentimes we forget that education is not just what we can show in the books. Education is not just what we can show on a test, but really, in the end of it all, we want to be able to live as productive people, walking in the steps of the Father, and ensuring that we are following our given abilities, talents, and the path that has been carved out for us without hindrance. Homeschooling allows us to follow those steps much more easily because the distractions that are out there, the times, the pressures, the specific focusing on just checking things off, passing tests, is really not there based upon how you specifically decide to teach and educate your children. You give them the ability to not only have all those skills, which are fine, because we do sometimes have to pass certain written exams and tests, and I sure know that because I've gone through that in my own career. But what about the life skills that we need? Since the pandemic, there's been so many things that have changed, and that is specifically understanding how to make sure you're living prudently, frugally, making sure that you're able to provide when there are times of want, when things are changing, when things are decreasing in quantity. What can we do? How do we make sure that we live a full life and can provide for each other? We do that not with the book skills, not with checking off lists and passing a test per se. It's the life skills. Do we know how to plant seeds? Do we know how to tend a garden? Do we understand how to bake a loaf of bread? Do we know how to dress a wound? Do we understand all these different life skills that could even save a life one day? This is what's important. And this is just one of several joys that I have because I can be one-on-one with my children. All that I have gained in my career, it's just grown even more because I can share this knowledge with my family and many others. And this is just one of the ways that I do, through talking to you. I don't know who I'm talking to right now because of course I don't see you, but I know that someone out there can benefit from what I'm saying, and if I can do something to be of benefit with the knowledge I have been given, I'll continue to do so. I'll continue to teach my children not just the educational skills, book skills, of course, having the ability to pass an exam if ever the need come, but I'll continue to teach them the life skills that they need so that one day they may be a help to others. These are the things that we really need. Now, don't get me wrong. There are many well-intentioned schools out there and institutions, but it's just not comparable to being one-on-one with your own child, not having to divide attention, which is inevitable when in a large classroom setting. Being able to change curriculum if it's not working. You have the ability to do that. You have the ability to read rich literature, not things that are just on the surface, but rich things that really feed your mind, your heart, and your soul. If you haven't considered homeschooling, take it from me. Go ahead and give it some deep thought. Discuss it with your family and see if it will work for you. If it's really of your heart's desire, it can happen. Definitely take those steps if you'd like to do it. So I hope you guys have a little bit more understanding of why a pediatrician could all of a sudden become a homeschool mom and keeper of her home. Thank you so much for listening and joining me in on this podcast. Please leave a review below so that others can hear about a podcast that you have found value in and enjoy. You can follow me on my website at www.drmoniqueadu.com, as well as my YouTube channel, Sustainable Living for Family, Health, and Home.